Hi everyone, it is Natalie from Being Intentionally Creative, and today we are going to fill a mold with resin, and not just clear resin. We are actually going to add some color and some glitter because, well, I love color and I love glitter, and this is the mold we are going to be filling. Now, in order to save some time and to not bore you, I've already mixed up my resin, the part A, part B. I will show you the resin I have used once we get through this. And then I will show you some of the other pieces that I made using the same mold, but using different resins, just so you can get an idea or a flavor for what different resins will actually create for you. So we have mixed part A and part B. You'll notice I have my gloves on. I wear these all the time. Please follow the manufacturer's guidelines for how to work with resin and to make sure you have the right protection on. Now, the other pieces I'm going to show you are a variety of different colors as such. And today what we're going to do with the piece we're going to make is one, as I said, I'm going to use glitter. I have pink and I have purple. And these glitters are by Craftsmart, and I've had them for quite a while. And I am a fan of some of the Craftsmart products, not all of them, but that is true of anything. You will have some products that you work with from a creative standpoint that you really love, and others maybe not so much. I have all kinds of glitter, and I thought these two colors would be perfect. And the reason I'm saying that these two colors would be perfect is because of the powder that I'm going to use as well. And this is a thermochromic, hopefully I've said that right, powder by Resin. And the fun part about this powder is that it will change color based on hot and cold. And it will go from a purple to a pink. And if it's cold, it's purple. If it warms up, it will be pink. And yesterday, I had done a test piece with UV resin, and I actually had to get my heat gun out to get it to change to pink. And part of the reason is my room here isn't overly warm, so I have to do things to warm up my room. I have a heater in my room. Anyways, we're going to add these three products to my resin. Now, one of the things I want to mention to you is that because my room is colder, it is to my advantage to warm up the resin before I mix it so that I don't get a lot of bubbles in. And the resin I'm using today, I really like it because it doesn't have a lot of bubbles in it. And what you can do is what's called a warm water bath as such for resin. You put your resin in its containers and you put it in warm water so it can warm up the resin. And usually people will take both bottles and they'll put it in a container and they'll warm it up. What I found was I had done that with one of my resins. I'm thinking because I was doing it on a regular basis, it was actually having an impact on the resin further on. So I would heat up the bottles, take out the resin I needed, and then I would do that the next time. And I thought, this isn't really working for me. So what I did today was something very simple. I measured out the resin I knew I was going to need. And then I took a tin plate here. I tacked the two containers I had part A and part B in to the bottom of this, and then I added some warm water. So all I'm technically doing is warming up what I'm actually going to need to complete my piece. And it seems to make more sense to me to do it that way than to take the jugs, warm them up, take out what I want, and then let them cool down and do that routine over and over again. For some reason, I'm thinking my way might be a better way because then I'm not impacting the bottles every time I need to heat them up because it's not warm enough. So I just wanted to share that with you. So what we're going to do, and a trick that I've learned for myself, is we're going to open up this little container. Look at that purple, people. Isn't that beautiful? And I kind of picked the purple pink combination because, well, I like them, but also in memory of my mom. So I'm going to take a bit of this. I'm not sure. I didn't put a lot in my UV resin because you have to be careful of that. But when I do this, I'm always very careful that I sort of very slowly move the powder around in the resin, because if I just sit and mix it right in, I'm going to end up with clumps, and I don't want clumps. And one thing I did notice with this powder, as opposed to a mica powder, is this is heavier. It seems to be a heavier powder, and that might have something to do with the fact that it changes color. Now, if you notice, as I am, that we started out with the purple, but in the resin, it's actually turning pink, and that might be partially because I've warmed it up, and also because my hands in these gloves get really warm. So let's just mix that up. And I know some people put a lot of powder and glitter and whatnot in their resin, and I'm a bit, yeah, I'm cautious when I do that. I don't like putting all kinds in it, but maybe today we'll add a little bit more. And the other thing with this is, because it's a thicker powder, there is the potential that if I don't mix this up properly, I'm going to end up with, I don't want to say chunks, but the powder not being mixed up, you'll notice it in my piece. So let's just get this mixed up. I love the fact that it changes color. That's really cool. That's really cool. And I'm interested to see how it's ultimately going to look in this piece. And it might be thought of that if you're going to use something like this, that you would want to do it in something that you wore against your body, like a pendant or a ring, that it would change color. I've seen some other people mention that if it's in the sun and it gets into a cool place, that as well will change its color. And this is I haven't used this product before, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it. So we're going to learn together. I want to thank you all who are watching for taking time out of your day to watch my videos. I love that I'm doing these now. I think it's really cool. And I appreciate you coming along for the ride. So we'll just put a little bit more. This is actually 20 mils of resin. I've been finding with this mold that most of the products that I've been using in it, it's taking about 20 mils to fill it. Not quite to the top, which is cool for me. I don't always need my molds filled right to the top. It depends on what I'm doing and what the end result is I'm looking for. Okay, so that's not too bad. It may not be as dense as what some people may like. I'm okay with that. Like I say, I do sparingly with my products, and some days I kind of question why I'm doing that. But I do it. Okay, so let's leave that. I think we've mixed that in pretty good. And I will list what the products are at the bottom on my video once it's up and running. So let's put some of this pink glitter in. Okay, and I always tap off on my containers because I don't really want to mix colors. The pink into the purple probably wouldn't be a big deal, but I do like to tap off. And then we'll do the purple. And then we'll mix this up. And I usually like to do the mica, well, that's not a mica powder, but the powders, mica powders, if I'm using a paste, I like to do them before I do my glitter. That helps me to know what my color is going to be. And also so I can see that I'm getting it all mixed in properly. And I hope you're seeing this, and my hands aren't. I put this black sheet down so I knew to keep that as long as I was sort of within this square, you'd be able to see what was going on. Okay, let's stir this up a little bit more. And I didn't, as I say, I didn't want to bore you mixing my resin together. I just thought I'd show you what I did when it came to putting the colors in. Okay, so we'll just clean off my stick here. And you can get, with these wood sticks, yes, they can introduce bubbles when they're new and haven't been used in resin before. But this stick has actually got quite a coating of resin on it, so I don't worry about bubbles. You can use silicone stir sticks that they have out there. Really, it's just a personal preference, and I find the wood sticks work okay, so that's why I use them. And I always end up wiping them off at the end, and then before I use them again, I will wipe them down because, well, as we know, dust is everywhere. I'm not sure how you avoid dust anywhere. Just like with resin, there are bottles that say that you have or may not get any bubbles, and I have yet to find a resin that doesn't contain bubbles. You know, even when I'm really careful with it, even when it's warmed up, I think bubbles are just natural with it. It just depends on how bad the bubbles are. And with some of the resins I've tried, it's been really bad. And those resins, because I don't like all the bubbles, I tend to use them for random pieces that I want to try something new and play with. So here's our mold. And what you'll notice too is that it's got sort of these narrow spots. So we're going to play with those a little bit so we can make sure we get resin everywhere. I usually start in the middle, and because this is a textured bottom, you're going to want to make sure it gets in everywhere. So I recommend in pieces like this, pouring slowly. Now, some people have said if you pour up higher, that the bubbles, if there are some, and I can see them, you wouldn't be able to see them from the camera, that it helps there not be bubbles. I'm not sure of the whole dynamic behind that. And with this being sort of a smaller piece, I don't want resin all over the place, so I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop there, and then I'm going to tilt this a bit. And I can also use one of my tools. So I have, not there. Oh, now I have to find it. Ah, there it is. So I have this, and I use this end quite a bit if I'm needing to get into spots down here. Like if I want to make sure that the resin's right to the end, because resin, once it starts flowing, will flow where you want it to go. And sometimes you have to be careful with that so it doesn't go where you don't want it to go. I will use this to get it where I want it to go. And when you're using a 2-part resin, that's actually a lot easier than it is with some of the other resins. UV resins, I find I'm challenged sometimes getting it where I want it to go. So let's pour the rest of this in here so that we can get it down to the other end. Now, I did check the level of my table, and it's pretty bang on. And a piece like this doesn't, I like things level, yes, but if this wasn't perfectly level, I'd be okay with that. The other thing is, I got this mold from Temu, and I'm not sure that it itself is totally level. So even if I had my table level, I may have to adjust this so that I have it level. But again, this isn't a piece I'm overly concerned about because of what it would be used for. Now, I can say that with this resin, it's filling the mold up a little more than what some of the other resins have. So I would still, regardless of the resin or the product I'm using, because I did a piece using Resincrete, I would do 20 mils in these. And one of the nice things is once you know how much it takes, then you just know how much to measure every time. And some pieces, it takes a little bit to get. I can eyeball things sometimes and I come pretty close, and then there are other times I'm totally out to lunch and I like to make one batch of resin for a piece I'm doing. And sometimes that doesn't and has not worked out for me. Okay, so we've got that poured now. I'm just going to go into the ends here again to make sure it's right down to the very tip of this at both ends. Okay, and as I say, once resin flows, it will go where it goes, so you have to be or want to be careful with it. Now, because it's got the base that it does in this, it's like a crystal, I just want to drop this a little bit to make sure I get it down into everywhere it goes and bring some air bubbles to the top if there are any. We will quickly go over this with a long neck lighter as it's not working for me. Nope, I have to get another one. Let's just do this. Okay. I have these on hand all the time. They advise not to use a torch because it will melt the silicone, and trust me, I've done that once. I actually had a really nice heart, a big heart mold that because I wasn't careful, the resin actually stuck to the silicone and I ruined the mold. So be very careful when you're doing that. So this will need to sit for 24 hours in order to completely set. So it won't be ready until tomorrow. Once it is demolded, I will post a picture on my Facebook Being Intentionally Creative page for you to see if you want to follow me over there as well. We're going to let this sit now for a few minutes so that any bubbles that there may be rise to the top, and then I can use my lighter again just to go over and get rid of them. You can always, not that I'm sort of recommending it, but you could sand it down if you notice that there were too many bubbles on the piece. Sometimes I do sand some things down just because I have this need for things to be the best I can make them. Anyway, so here we go with this. One of the other things I always do too with pieces like this is I will cover them up to keep the dust off them. I don't think you're ever going to prevent, unless you have a HEPA filter that takes all the dust out of your room. I don't, and so I cover my pieces up. And depending on the color, you would be able to see any dust particles, and then you could use something like this or a toothpick to take them off. I've been very fortunate. I don't usually get much on because of covering them up. So for right now, I'm going to take my gloves off so that we can have a look at some of the other pieces that I've already done. As I say, my hands get very warm some days in these gloves that I use. So just a moment. All right. One of the things I want to mention to you, so we'll start with the one piece I did. So this piece is using polyurethane. And what I did was I took some mica powder and I did the bottom of the mold, and then I poured the polyurethane over top of it. And I was really going just to see what I could do with it. I know the sides don't look all that great, and I'm totally cool with that. And the top here, I didn't get the mica powder everywhere. One thing I want to mention when you're filling in one of the molds and you're using a brush. So I have makeup brushes I use, and I also have some other very tiny brushes that I use to fill in if I'm wanting to be specific on this color goes here, this color goes here. And on some of my molds, I do that. When I did this piece, I didn't use this brush. I used another makeup brush. And what ended up happening was, on the side here, you'll see one of the brush pieces got into the resin, and I didn't see it until I took it out. So you want to make sure that when you're using a brush that you've got one that's good quality and isn't going to have the bristles come out. So take note of what you're using. If you've got a brush that has a tendency to let the bristles come out, don't use it. Or be very careful and closely check your mold before you pour in your resin, because that could it could ruin a piece depending on what you're doing. So the brush I had been using, I've thrown that out now, and I will go back to using this trusty one because it's been very good. It gets where I want the mica powders to go, and I have different sizes depending on what I'm doing. So that's that one. I kind of like, hopefully you can see sort of its different shimmering of colors in it. And I used on that a chameleon powder, again by Let's Resin, and it's plum. So I'll open up the jar quickly for you. So that's what the inside looks like. And that's what I used on this piece. Now, I also decided I would try some UV resin. Now, I'm not going to recommend UV resin for pieces this big. There may be some people out there who will use it. I was wanting to play, so you can kind of see it didn't really come out the way it needed to or should have because of the UV resin, and it's just not as easy to work with, I think, sometimes as what a 2-part epoxy resin would be. But again, choice is yours what you work with. I was just wanting to get some pieces done quickly, so that's why I used it. And then I threw this glitter into it. So I just took each color, mixed it in with my UV resin, and then just put it wherever I wanted within the mold. And I came up with that. I don't mind it. I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to clean up, but I wanted you to see what would happen. Let me do it down on the black. Maybe you can see it better. When you use UV resin, if it doesn't flow properly, and I doubt you're going to be able to see, but there are some air pockets in here with the UV resin as well. Now, I could get that with the 2-part, but I know the 2-part's going to flow probably better than what this UV resin did. But it does look pretty. I mean, it looks pretty. I do like how it turned out, but I have to fix the back side up. Now, the last piece is this, and this was made with Resincrete. Now, you'll notice that it's got sort of a different texture to it. So what I did was, once it had set overnight, I then came in with the Deco Art. Can you see that? There we go. The Deco Art Enchanted Shimmer Blue. And I put that sort of on this section and up because I wanted to know how it would look, how the Resincrete would pick that up and sort of what kind of effect I would get. And then just below that, in around here, and I didn't do the best job of it, but I took some Dilution Stickles, this particular color, and I did it just around here, and I got more sparkle from it than I did from the Deco Art. But I was, again, it's one of those things I do. I play because I want to see what's going to end up happening for me. And then the bottom, I just left plain because I appreciate that some people like a matte finish to something and may have been totally cool if their entire piece looked like the bottom of this looks. Now, the other thing with this, I am going to end up sanding this down as well because you'll notice it's got a bit of a jagged edge here and I just want it to be smooth. So I am going to sand this down and then I'll decide whether I want to completely cover this with something or just do something else different down at the bottom here. And I have not decided what I'm going to do with that. But I wanted to show this to you as well, what you could do with the Resincrete, which again, as I say to some people, it's like a clay and it hardens really well. And at some point, I'm going to find really what the secret is to making this colorful because I struggle with getting color in this, but that's okay. I have time to figure that out. And this Illuminite Translucent Orange Ocean Blue is what I use to color the Resincrete. Last but not least, because this we can't take out until tomorrow, I did this piece, And I want to make sure I have it here. And I used Eye Candy Glimmer Ghost Gold, and that's all I put in this piece. And I'm a huge fan of Eye Candy because their product, the colors are just, to me, amazing. And I'm going to do a video on their product at some point, especially because I have found so far the best red and silver by Eye Candy. So I want to do a video on them. But I did this piece. Again, we're dealing with the same mold. This was done with a 4-hour cure by Let's Resin. So this is what I used for that piece. And basically it's a 4-hour cure. So technically, if I'd wanted to, I could have taken this out of the mold after 4 hours, but it fully cures within 8 to 10. And because I knew this video wasn't going to be done straight away, I knew I could just let it sit. So it will have fully cured by now. And I did the Glimmer Ghost Gold one because I wanted just to see if that's all I put in the resin, how it would turn out. So you get to see the demolding. So we'll take this out. And I might move that aside so I can put this down. So I want to show you like really close up. So this is what it looks like on the inside of this mold. So it's got quite a bit of detail, and that's why you're going to want to make sure the resin gets into all those pieces and detail of this mold. Okay, so here we have, and hopefully, I'm hoping you can see the glimmer on that. And very quickly, I'm just going to take this stuff and move it off to the side because it's not relevant. We're going to take this one. Oops. See, be very careful with your workspaces. And always, 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 when you're done using something, put the lid back on it. So if something like that happens, you knock something off your table, you are not going to have to worry about getting something all over the place. So we'll just quickly go over this again. That looks pretty decent. Okay. And let's just move this off to the side very quickly, and then I'll move it back into the center when we're done. So I can't tell from where I'm sitting whether or not you can see the gold in that. But I think using something like this and then hanging on a tree with, well, hanging on a tree, hanging anywhere really, if the light catches that, and I'm hoping that it is, that you get to see the gold flecks that are in it. Because I think it's really cool that it's, and I don't know if the back, but it's, what I like too is almost they're suspended in there. And with glitter, sometimes it just sinks, depending on the weight of the glitter and the resin, it'll just sink. Being this is a 4-hour cure resin, it's going to be thicker than the resin I use today. So that's something else to keep in mind. When you're using 4-hour cure, it is thicker, and part of the reason is so it can cure in the 4 hours. So hopefully you're getting to see that. Again, I'm going to be cleaning this piece up. I mean, I've got this edge here, and I don't like that, so I'm going to clean that up, and I'm going to sand this too. And again, the mold I don't think is the best because it's not flat at the top here. So I don't think the mold itself is perfect, but that's okay. You get a little bit of sandpaper, you sand it down, and then I can always put a UV resin coat on the top of it just to take away from the marks that have gotten there because of the sandpaper. And depending on what I'm doing, I found out this past winter not to use a really heavy grit sandpaper when you're sanding down. And if you're going to, make sure that you go from a heavy grit to the lighter to the lighter to the lighter, so that you can get rid of the scratches and whatnot on it. But I wanted you to see that, and I really like how that's turned out. And I think against, you know, a really cool, light, that's going to look really neat. So there's that. Okay. So we're going to just move this piece back into the center. This will stay here. until tomorrow when I can take it out of its mold. They do recommend, and it is true, for what I'm doing and the purposes of this video, really once you cover something up and you're sure you're done with the bubbles and whatnot that you've torched, just leave your cover on it so that you don't end up introducing more dust to your piece than you want to. And depending on what you're doing, you really don't want to see dust. That's my video for today. I hope you've enjoyed. I will list, as I said, all the different products I have used to make the various pieces that you're seeing today. Just put them out here again for you to view. I will be cleaning these pieces up so that they don't have the sharp edges on them. And again, the blue one, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I will probably end up posting pictures on my Facebook page. I hope you have a beautiful day doing whatever you're doing. I again thank you for showing up and watching my video. Subscribe and like, and I will be doing more videos in the near future. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye for now.